never bother with people I hate. That's why the lady is a tramp.
Hey friend, welcome to my channel, Karine Alourde, where we talk about everything, and I'm Karine Alourde. If you're not yet part of the friendship circle, please be sure to like, subscribe, and join the friendship circle. If you're already part of the friendship circle, please be sure to turn on your notification bell so you can always know when I post a new upload. Now let's get into this video. Today we are talking about the iconic Miss Lena Horne. She is just so gorgeous, and people are easily mesmerized by Lena Horne's beauty and her vocals. So she has such a sweet, soothing voice and graced stages like a goddess. So jazz scholar and author Stanley Crouch described her saying this: she had a luminous, restrained presence that most superstars try to pretend they have, but she really had it. Lena Horne had a difficult time with Hollywood though, despite all the beauty, glitz, and glamour, and she walked away several times and faced a lot of depression and sadness. Later on in life, she would say, "I was never able to enjoy this damned thing. It was always a hassle, a fight," end quote. Today's video, we are going to talk about her history of just the trouble that Hollywood put her through, her jealous mother, her marrying her last husband just to propel her career, and the controversy surrounding that. But before we get into her childhood and all of that, I do want to give you guys a few fun facts about Miss Lena Horne. Her hobbies include writing, painting, and she loved to cook. Her favorite food, which I don't know why, is stinky tofu. Comment below if you've ever had stinky tofu or like it. I'm just so repulsed by it. So I'm like, oh, I don't like tofu, period. I just don't. It makes me so gassy. And then she also loved ketchup, which is weird. Like, do any of you guys just love ketchup? I know some people that just like mustard and mayo, but she loved ketchup. Her favorite color was also black. But let's get into her childhood. Lena Horne was born on June 30th, 1917 in Brooklyn, New York. I know she's very fair-skinned, and at first glance, especially in her black and white pictures, you might not know that she's black. And she also has fine hair, but both sides of her family were African American. They did have a little mixed race in them though, with white. She grew up pretty wealthy to upper middle class, well-educated black people. Her lineage is linked to the John C. Calhoun family, who owned slaves whose descendants included Horne. So the Calhoun family owned slaves, and they also slept with the slaves and created, you know, the fairer mulatto, the mulatto type. So her father, Edwin Fletcher, owned a hotel and a restaurant at some point, and her mother was an actress who traveled a lot, so could barely be around to raise Lena, and she was just desperately trying to be famous. That was the thing about her mother, to the point where she would often abandon Lena just to be raised by other people. Her father left the family when Lena was only 3 years old because he developed a gambling problem, which was just terrible. So because of this resulted in Horne being mostly raised by her grandparents, Cora Calhoun and Edwin Horne. Horne's grandmother, Cora Calhoun Horne, was well known in her community as an active supporter of many civil rights causes, and she took Lena to meetings of the NAACP, the Urban League, and the suffragette organizations, which fought for women's rights. So that's where she got her activism kickstart. She found herself being moved around a lot in her early years. She moved to Georgia when she was 5 and traveled with her mother for a while all over the country. While living with her mother, Horne recounts her time with 2 Macon women who taught her traditional Southern cooking and told her Bible stories in her autobiography, Lena, that was written in 1965, and her autobiography it's a pretty good read. During her time in Macon, Lena also sang in a youth choir that performed at the City Hall. Then for 2 years, she lived with her uncle Frank S. Horne, who was the dean at Fort Valley Junior Industrial Institute. Later, when Lena was 12, she moved back with her mother to New York, where she later attended St. Peter Claver School. She later went to an all-girls high school where she did end up dropping out. She dropped out to go work at the Cotton Club and things like that. So, which I guess was a great move for her because it did end up working out for her. Soon as she became 18, she went to live with her father in Pittsburgh. Her father lived in the prestigious Little Harlem, where all the movers and shakers resided. There is where she learned music from native Pittsburghers Billy Strayhorn and Billy Eckstein. She told her father that she wanted to be an actress, and her father was heavily against it. And this is a direct quote from her. She said, "I told him I was going to be a movie star. He said, 'Lena, I'm going to buy you a house and most of all, a maid, because that's the role you'll be playing. So you might as well know what a real maid does.'" Ouch. During those days, if you were African American, you only played maids in movies. So that's why her father was so against it. Now, as far as her career goes, in 1933, Lena joined the chorus line of the Cotton Club in New York City. There she garnered experience in performance and built up a stage presence. In the spring of 1934, she had her first featured role starring Adelaide Hall, who took Lena under her wing. Lena made her first screen appearance as a dancer in the musical short Cab Calloway's Jitterbug Party, and the rest was history. She starred as the Bronze Venus in the movie The Dukes is Top. In 1942, Lena became the first Black performer to sign a contract with a major film studio, MGM. According to Lena, her father came to Los Angeles and marched right into MGM executive mayor's office less than pleased. He said, "Mr. Mayor, it is a great privilege you're offering my daughter, but I can buy my daughter her own maid." He was just jiving, you understand, she told TV host Dick Cavett in 1981. Mayor promised to never cast Lena as a maid or a jungle maiden, and he did keep his promise. In a Vanity Fair article written by Hadley Hall Mears, they stated that Horne's mother, Edna, a failed actress who was extremely jealous of her increasingly famous daughter, descended on LA. But she came to LA for a different reason. She wanted a career like Lena, right? And she said if Lena didn't cooperate, she would sell the press a story about a selfish girl who climbed to stardom on her mother's shoulders, then tossed her aside. The audacity. So while her daughter could not make her a star, she did end up paying her mother off. And she said, "I worked out a solution with a lawyer." Horne would later write in her memoir. That is terrible to feel. You didn't even really try to raise her. You had many different people raise her. She was being tossed around in different homes and only to blackmail her when she finally made it. This is why they say family, sometimes your own mother, your own blood. Like sometimes you just gotta distance yourself from people, right? She was signed by MGM Studio, where her official movie debut with MGM was Panama Hattie, where she gave us the iconic song Stormy Weather. She is known for this little number and it really placed her on the map.
Oh, why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather.
So a full circle moment, the movie was loosely based on Adelaide Hall, who took Lena Horne under her wings at the Cotton Club. So my favorite Lena Horne film was Cabin in the Sky. Well, that one that she starred in, she just looks so stunning in it, and that one came in 1943. So let's talk a little bit about the discrimination that she faced. She never got a featured leading role because she was Black. The films had to be edited in a way that would not cause controversy because several cities had theaters that refused to show films with Black performers. This is why most of her scenes in movies, if you watch during that era, was her alone without anyone else really there. That way the editors could easily remove her or edit the scenes without anyone really noticing. That's pretty tragic. According to an article from The Atlantic written by John Maroney, it says that from the beginning, Horne was troubled by her inability to fit in anywhere. She refused to play the maid and the prostitute roles, you know, the sensual Jezebel roles, usually reserved for Black actresses of her time, and that kind of narrowed her prospects in Hollywood. At the time, many Black artists accused her of using her lighter skin to pass. Horne herself was ambivalent about her looks. She said, "I came from one of the first families of Brooklyn, yet it was the RAPE of slave women by their masters which accounted for our white blood, which in turn made us a Negro society." She had light skin, so when she played lead roles alongside dark-skinned men, the studio asked the makeup department to darken her skin. Unfortunately, the makeup hindered the advancement of minority women in the film industry. It didn't take long for studios to use the makeup to darken white women in order for them to play minority roles in all-white cast. And also, darker-skinned women were upset that Lena was actually agreeing to have her skin darkened, but also white people were uncomfortable with how white passing Lena was, and they wanted her to be differentiated. So in a lot of her older movies, they really did darken her skin. She was not that dark. She was really actually a little bit more pale, and she would be whiter even than some of the white actresses of her day. Comment below about that. It must be a tough spot to just be like, dang, what do I do? You're too white for the blacks, you're too white for the whites. Basically, she was just too white. The whites were uncomfortable with her whiteness and the blacks were uncomfortable with her whiteness. And it was just like she just couldn't be herself. Despite this, Lena Horne kept working hard and she kept pushing. She went on to star in Ziegfeld Follies, which was another good one. She went after the role of Julie Laverne in the film Showboat, but they gave the role to Ava Gardner because at that time, interracial romance on films were banned. So Ava Gardner and Lena Horne were friends in real life, so this did hurt them both. And to add more salt to the wound, executives wanted Ava Gardner to use Lena's recordings and vocals to practice for the movie. This did offend Ava and Lena deeply, and they both stood their ground. This led to actress Annette Warren's voice and recordings to be used instead. So MGM could have easily used Lena, but they preferred to just go with a knockoff. And Ava Gardner was quoted as saying, why didn't they just use you if they're gonna have us do all of this anyways? For you guys saying, well, why didn't Ava Gardner just decline the role, you know, and stuff like that? They were very limited in these contracts, these old school limited contracts. Once you signed, you couldn't work with other companies. You had a certain limit of movies you had to do with them. You couldn't decline certain roles at times. So this is why Lena Horne's father was so adamant about talking to Mayer, saying that you cannot have my daughter in these roles if you're gonna have her under contract. Because if he didn't go and like do that before she signed away the contracts and stuff like that, they probably would have forced her legally to do those roles. So it's not like Ava really had much of a choice, and they still remain friends. Did you guys know that they were so close, in fact, that Frank Sinatra, when he was married to Ava Gardner, thought that Lena Horne and Ava Gardner were actually lovers. And they spoke so fondly of each other that when Ava Gardner passed away, Lena Horne was so distraught, and she was like, why did she leave me? The audacity of her to just die like that, you know? And they were very, very close friends. Lena Horne was also very close to Judy Garland also. So let's talk about her hate towards Hollywood. This all angered, everything that was happening really angered and hurt Lena deeply. The magic of Hollywood was dwindling for her, and she lost the fire for it, the passion for it. It was just gone with each new attack. So she started to focus on her nightclub performances instead. She said she was tired of being typecast as a Negro who stands against a pillar singing a song, which is really what they did. They put a pillar there, a pole, and she would stand against it, sing, and they'd include that in the movie, and that was it. But she never had any speaking roles. She said, I did that 20 times too often, which is very sad. She was blackballed during the 50s for her connections in the 1940s with communist-backed groups, and she did denounce these groups later on in life. Horne was active in the civil rights movements for many years. She was all about integration, like integrating the two races. So in 1941, she performed at Cafe Society, New York City's first integrated venue, and according to her Kennedy Center biography, she refused to perform for segregated audiences or groups in which German POWs were seated in front of black servicemen. She walked off the stage to the first row where the black troops were seated and performed with the Germans behind her after seeing them forced to sit in a back seat. So she was with Medgar Evers at an NAACP rally in Jackson, Mississippi, the weekend before he was assassinated. She spoke and performed on the March on Washington on behalf of the NAACP and the National Council of Negro Women, and she also worked with Eleanor Roosevelt to pass anti-lynching laws. She returned to Hollywood on her own terms, playing Claire Quintana, a madam in a brothel in the film Death of a Gunfighter, and that was released in 1969. So her first role with no reference to her color, so good for her. She went on to play the Good Witch Glinda in the movie The Wiz. It was an all-black adaptation of The Wizard of Oz with like Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, and she was the Good Witch. So iconic role. That's how me and my generation, I first was introduced to Miss Lena Horne. Lena Horne established herself as one of the most sought-after nightclub performers of the post-war era. After leaving Hollywood, she performed at a variety of clubs and hotels in the United States, Canada, and Europe, including the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, the Coconut Grove in Los Angeles, and the Waldorf Astoria in New York. Lena Horne at the Waldorf Astoria, a live album released in 1957, became the best-selling record by a female artist in the history of the RCA Victor label. So Horne was the first African-American woman nominated for a Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical for her part in the Calypso musical Jamaica. In addition, Lena Horne appeared on television shows such as The Muppet Show, Sesame Street, and Sanford and Son in the 1970s, as well as The Cosby Show in 1985 and A Different World in 1993, which had me so excited. At 63, Lena Horne planned to retire from show business. She went on tour for 2 months for a string of benefit concerts sponsored by the sorority Delta Sigma Theta in the summer of 1980, but of course she didn't really stop working there, so she teased retirement but didn't quite stop. In May 1981, the Netherlander organization Michael Frazier and Fred Walker, they booked Horne for a 4-week engagement at the newly named Nederlander Theater, which was a huge success. She went on to win 2 Grammy Awards for it, as well as a Tony Award. The show was extended due to its success, and she went on to do a cast recording of the show, Lena Horne, the Lady in Her Music, 1989, and she received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. In 1995, a live album of her performances was released, winning a Grammy Award for Best Jazz Vocal Album. Being Myself, Horne's second studio album, was released in 1998. Horne retired from performing and disappeared from public view after that. And in 2003, ABC announced that Janet Jackson was supposed to star as Lena Horne in the television version of the biopic, but soon that's when Janet Jackson had the whole wardrobe malfunction during the 2004 Super Bowl. And Variety reported that Lena Horne demanded Jackson be removed from the project. And then ABC executives really tried to convince Lena Horne to reconsider her demands. But according to the Associated Press report, Jackson representatives told them that she left willingly after Horne and her daughter asked that she didn't take part in it anymore. So Oprah Winfrey did campaign for Alicia Keys to take on the role, which Alicia looks very much like Lena. She does favor her. She would do really good with that. So during a 2005 interview on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Oprah stated that she might possibly consider producing the biopic herself, casting Keys as Horne. Comment below if you would be here for this. I think Alicia is actually a better choice than Janet, you know? They really do favor. So as far as her marriages go, Lena had affairs with 25 times heavyweight champion Joe Louis and actors Artie Shaw, Orson Welles, as well as director Vincente Minnelli. Lena, like many women at that time, married young at 19 and to the first man she ever dated. So she married Louis Jordan Jones, a political operative, in 1937 in Pittsburgh. They had a daughter in December 1937, and they had a son in February 1940 who unfortunately passed away due to kidney disease in 1970. That is very fortunate. He was very handsome also. So Horne and her husband Jones eventually separated in 1940, and they divorced in 1944. Later on, she married Lenny Hayton, a music director and one of MGM's premier musical conductors and arrangers, in Paris in December 1947. And she did say France is her favorite place to visit, so it's cute that they got married there. This did cause a lot of controversy, you know, their marriage, because he was white. And during these times, there was still a lot of racial tension. Because of this, they did not announce their marriage until 3 years later. Here's another interesting story I found from Vanity Fair written by Hadley Mears. In 1960, Lena Horne and her second husband, Lenny Hayton, went to dinner at the Luau in Beverly Hills, which was a hotspot owned by Lana Turner's ex-husband, Stephen Crane. Their evening was shattered by a drunk engineer named Harvey St. Vincent, who was angered that a waiter dared serve Horne first. "So that's Lena Horne, huh?" he said. "Well, she's just another black ninja, if you guys catch my drift. There ain't nothing they can do for me," end quote. So according to reports, Lena stood up for herself and she was very angry. She got up and stated, "I can hear what you're saying and I want you to stop." So the belligerent man would not stop. He continued to bark hate speech at Lena. After decades of abuse, she just got tired, you know, she got tired and she was done. So trembling, she got up from the chair. She saw an ashtray filled with cigarette butts. She grabbed it and threw it at his head. Then she grabbed a hurricane lamp and threw it with all her might. So St. Vincent sat there stunned, blood dripping from a gash above his left eye. Horne stared him down, all red in the face. The next day, reporters crowded around Horne's suite at the Ambassador. And this is what she had to say to them. She said, "I'm sorry he had to learn in such a violent manner that people don't like to be insulted," she told the press. "But I don't go for that stuff." They separated in the early 1960s, but they never got divorced. He passed away in 1970, and in her autobiography, Lena, written by Richard Schickel, Horn recounts the enormous pressure she and her husband faced as an interracial couple. She later admitted in an interview in Ebony that she had married Hayden to advance her career and cross the color barrier in show business, but learned to love him very much. In 1981, she told the New York Times, "He could get me into places no black manager could. It was wrong of me, but as a black woman, I knew what I had against me." But she said, because he was a nice man and because he was in my corner, I began to love him. And many people did that back then. Horn passed on due to congestive heart failure on May 9th, 2010, but she did live a very long life. And she lived until the age of 92, and she still looked good. Like, her skin, her face, and I don't believe she ever touched her face. She just always looked good. She aged gracefully. She didn't like do a lot, you know. And her remains were cremated. She still continues to be an icon today, but a lot of people don't really talk about Lena Horne enough for me. Like, I know Dorothy Dandridge has been getting her clout and all of this stuff too, and so many others, but there's so many others that keep your notifications on, because so many other videos that are coming that I will be doing breakdowns on. And Lena Horne is just one of those icons that deserve her flowers, a natural beauty. She fought for inclusion, and she was one of the first black women to get a major studio deal, and she never played a maid, and I love that for her. Okay, comment below, what are your thoughts? I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you guys in another video on Sunday. Bye.